episode. No, actually, I love it. It's the best episode ever. We're here, and we're excited to talk about Joe Biden, best future president ever. See, because of the way time works and how progressives have increasingly pushed Democrats further to the left on a lot of things like healthcare, kind of, but specifically on the subject of climate change. So that would make, theoretically, Joe Biden the most progressive president we've ever had. Are there other politicians more progressive than him? Why, yes. Thanks for asking me from the past. And yes, I would rather have those people as president. I can't stress enough how many other people I'd rather have as president. But also, one of those people is not Donald Trump. I do not want Donald Trump as the president, and therefore would like Joe Biden to become the president. Joe Biden being the only other option. I'd be saying this right now if it was Bernie, obviously, and I would in fact prefer that situation, or anyone else who won the primaries. But I guess it includes former Mayor Pete and not Bloomberg. And again, I recognize what a bummer this all is, how defeating it feels to be here, asking people to do the American thing and vote for a politician that quite frankly sucks. He sucks. But he sucks less than Trump, who sucks dangerously more in many ways. For the past several years, we here at the Shoney have urged, begged Democrats to run not on just Trump bad, but rather on good things that are possible. And they really seem to be leaning on the Trump bad part, which luckily is true. He bad. But going back to climate change, Joe has a pretty progressive plan. It's not terrible. Is it what we need to do? Nah, dog, it's really not. But is it better than Donald Trump's plan, which is no plan at all? Yes, it is. It's better than exactly no plan. And what a fucking tragedy that is. That's where we're at. And since climate change is, as one could argue, literally the biggest threat currently facing humanity, having any plan versus having no plan, it's kind of an automatic win, right? Like, we don't really have to look at any other issue. Well, we will, but this should really clinch it. If you care about making sure your great-grandchildren can breathe, or about the general survival of the human race, or at the very least you did some awesome bathroom graffiti and want to make sure people still exist to see it 100 years from now, please vote for the person who's actually receptive to climate change being real and a solvable problem. I really don't want to make this seem like a campaign ad for Joe Biden, because I don't know if you know this, I don't really care for the guy, and that's not what this show is about. But I also think 4 more years of Donald Trump sounds like a fever dream trapped inside another fever dream you had because your fever's so high because you're in hell. Or just on Earth in 30 years because of climate change. So yeah, Biden's been actually very smart by tying climate change to basically every issue, and how in order to address it, we would need sweeping changes. Sweeping changes is fine to doubt he would implement, but he's not lying about climate change being made up or going on rants about his gigantic turds and how they're too hard to flush these days. He's proposing a $2 trillion plan aimed at using the economic recovery to boost renewable energy while also introducing an Office of Environmental and Climate Justice to address how environmental policy disproportionately fucks over communities of color. He's even warming up to the Green New Deal while still distancing himself from it like a sibling locked in the basement that I'm ashamed of. That he's ashamed of.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
It would be really cool if you just supported that. It's actually very easy. Trump's going to be like, you support the Green New Deal, and you can be like, yeah, it's good, and here's why. People like the New Deal. You're framing yourself as FDR 2.0. It's odd that you won't just do that, but I guess his plan is neat too. Good plan, Joe. We are excited about it. But what's actually good here is how he came up with it, which was by reaching out to and listening to environmentalist groups that had previously criticized him. And if he actually follows through, we're hopefully going to see more of that from him. You know, maybe he'll take a back seat and let some more extremist Antifa views take control, and actually eventually welcome a plan like the dreaded and evil Green New Deal, as seen here in this scientific graph. Look, again, it's not as good as it can be, or should be, and in fact, it is grim. But in order to fully distance himself from our current president, Biden will have to be seen as very open to ideas and criticism, which means he can possibly be pushed further. Democrats actually love caving, more so to Republicans, but they do love caving on issues. And Trump is actually unbullyable. You can't bully him into doing anything. He's not even based in reality, and he's a cruel narcissist too, etc. and so forth. But you know, you can bully Joe Biden, who sucks and should do better. So that's fun. That could be fun. We could have fun doing that. Though it should be clear, a lot of the people telling you to shut up now and push Biden to left later, if he wins and you try to do that, they're going to tell you to calm down and pick your battles. Don't let them. More on that in a bit. But again, and this is what this election comes down to, divorced from Joe, you don't have to do this Joe Biden. Compare anyone to Donald Trump, who appears to be in the pocket of big end of the world. He's buried climate change reports, rolled back emission standards, and has dismantled too many environmental protections to count. He's constantly defunding things that are good, that help people. The biggest environmental win we've gotten from Trump is that he's finally kind of admitted that maybe, sorta, humans have something to do with climate change. A thing he knows is true, but is lying about in order to protect capital. That's how decades behind he is. In this one issue, the choice is literally between a person who has a plan to combat climate change, and B, a person who is actively working to speed up climate change. It's depressing how easy the choice is. Like, can you imagine if we actually had to parse through each candidate's policy to tell which one was better? Or if in the face of an overwhelmingly unlikable and incompetent, ignorant, cruel loser, we had somebody get up there and say not only are good things possible, but that he wants to do them, and that we will do them, also if there were more than two viable parties. How cool would that be? But we don't get to do that thing. Remember when the president downplayed a virus for a year and then got the virus and then didn't get tested before a debate and spread it to a bunch of other people? It's so hard figuring out who to vote for. The guy who didn't personally spread a virus, or the guy who did that, and also seems to actively hate environmental regulations and denies climate change except when it comes to his own businesses. It's just, man, like, hey, you want to talk about prison reform? Joe Biden actually says he wants to abolish the death penalty. No idea if he'll actually do that, but his opponent, the president, takes a slightly different approach in that he publicly praises authoritarian countries that execute people for drug offenses.
You go into China, you say, how's your drug problem? And they don't even know, President Xi doesn't even know what you're talking about. We have no drug problem. They have quick trials, right? Quick trials. And I won't even tell you what the punishment is.
It's death. That's the thing he won't say that it is. So, geez, I don't know. Do we go with the guy who doesn't think we should execute people? Or the guy who really super wants to execute people for crimes that aren't even violent? It's a tough choice, folks. Should we pick the guy who's super impressed by death squads? Or, you know, the one that isn't so much into that out loud and regularly? And I'm sure there are people responding to a lot of things I've been saying. You know, well, Biden doesn't like death squads in America, or drone strikes that have gone up significantly under Trump, and a bunch of other reasons why our society and both parties sucked shit before Trump. But to contrast the execute drug dealers angle, here's Biden talking about drug addiction with sissy ideas like compassion and love.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
What a baby's move, appealing to the millions of Americans who have personally struggled with addiction. What a hard choice we all have. Still, it would be disingenuous to act like Joe Biden is a big prison and police reform champion, because he's super not. And in fact, a lot of policies he's now saying he wants to get rid of are ones that he helped create. And in fact, used to boast about. His campaign page talks about eliminating mandatory minimums and the crack cocaine sentencing disparity, where those caught with crack got a way longer prison time than the high-class cocaine users. And that's good of him. But it would have been better if he wasn't the one who helped create both of those things in the 80s, or things like civil asset forfeiture. And maybe he should talk openly about how that was a big mistake in his past. But again, his opponent